This is Jeremy Schiefling, host of Best Tool Ever. And I am so excited today because we are joined by the amazing, incredible Sujani, the host and founder of PHSpot, which is the single best resource for anyone who's looking to break into the public health space. She's done it herself. She's helped others do it as well. And if you're interested, you owe it to yourself to check out PHSpot because Sujani is the guru. Welcome, Sujani.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's probably one of the best introductions I've got. I felt like I was on this talk show or one of those TV shows. Thanks
Well, I
so
have
much.
to say, growing up, I always admired Oprah. I always wanted to have my
Oh
own
yeah,
couch so I could
yeah.
have a celebrity guest. But this
Well,
is even better.
2.0 of this podcast will be that.
That's right. But I say Oprah never got to geek out about productivity tools. So
Yeah,
this is my dream come true, which is to talk with someone who is just as passionate about this topic as I am.
yeah, yeah.
So Johnny, first of all, tell folks a little bit more about yourself in terms of what you do, how you came to this journey, and then tell us a little bit about what you want to share today.
Yeah. So I think I nowadays when I do my introduction, I start with that I became a mom last year, and it's been my greatest joy. And
Aw.
it is actually very relevant to the topic we're talking about today, and kind of why I decided to explore these, different tools. And so I was trained as an epidemiologist, and I feel like for those who aren't in the public health space, they probably don't need to, get a 101 on what public health is nowadays because of COVID. So I worked in the space for about 10 years, and throughout my whole journey, I've always loved helping individuals who are trying to pave their path in public health. And so I do one-on-one, support and counseling and coaching, and realized people were just getting my side of the story, and that there needed to be an online platform where other public health professionals could also share their journeys. I love to be building tools and resources. So phspot.org essentially became an online platform to help other public health professionals. So we have a podcast, we have a blog where we share career journeys from other public health professionals on it. And then we also have free resources and tools for anyone who just needs a little bit of help building their career. We have a community where we offer weekly training and guest speakers come in. So yeah, it's pretty much an amazing experience for anybody that wants to focus on career growth, and it's within public health. And so that's how PHSpot was born, because I just felt like people needed to hear more than my career path, and they needed to hear other people's stories. And so I figured, yeah, let's create this.
Oh, I love that. And what a timely sort of topic, given everything that's happened in the world the last couple of years.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
absolutely need more amazing folks in this space. So I'm impressed. And I know that you were telling me before we started recording that when you launched your podcast, you realized that this massive sort of logistical undertaking, getting all these moving pieces to work together. Tell us a little bit about how you worked that magic.
Yeah. So PHSpot, we launched it officially at the beginning of 2017. Initially, we had, newsletter, a few tools, and the blog. And then the idea for a podcast, I guess, came about maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, probably our third year. And so I was doing all of the work, from sourcing the guests to creating the scripts or the questions and kind of prepping, doing the research, then editing, and then the post-production and uploading and all the show notes. And you know what that looks like, Jeremy. And so at the beginning, it's nice to do it yourself because you understand the process. And then eventually, I started off with bi-weekly episodes, then we moved into weekly episodes, and it just became so much work. So hired people to support me with that process. But, hiring comes with its own issues, I suppose, good issues, because we're all trying to work together. Everyone's got different timelines, and I didn't want to be a bottleneck for my team members. And so that's where I kind of started thinking about, okay, what's the best way to make sure the production and then the publishing of the podcast is not being, I guess, hindered by me not responding to emails right away when my editor is like in a good editing jam, and she just wants to finish, editing 5 different episodes, and she can't get a hold of me or things like that. So that was really the motivation behind kind of trying to see where we could automate and where we can save people's time, right? So I had somebody else also come on who was doing a lot of great research. She was thinking through great questions to ask my guests. But then we realized that she was spending more time sending emails and doing all these like small tasks. And I knew like her brain was better used elsewhere. So that was also another motivation. And the third motivation was I was pregnant and I knew that I would be off of PH Spot for 6 months. So that's the timing I gave myself where I said, everything needs to run smoothly and I cannot like be a bottleneck here. So really those were the three motivators to like me exploring tools to really automate that whole process.
Wow. And that's a
Yeah.
perfect backdrop for the really fun stuff, which is show us how you pulled it off, Sujani. What tools did you use? How did you set it up?
Okay, so first it was I probably don't have the first tool, which was a paper and pen, where I just
Aha.
scribbled down all of the different steps that was required from me and the rest of the team to put a podcast out there into the world. And so, not that the details matter here, but this is kind of just an overview of what the different steps looked like. And we have
Wow.
all the different people here on the left side, and then all of the different things that took place. And really, we start here by like a guest is recommended, or we have an idea for a podcast, and then all of these different things were happening, right?
Yeah,
Between
so many steps.
4 or 5 people. And my team is not full time, meaning
Right.
everyone, we work asynchronously. So I could be working at 5 a.m. Somebody else is working at 5 p.m. So we really could not work together at the same time. And
Yeah.
so once I put this down, I started color coding. So these like red circles and
Aha.
blue circles, they're kind of, they used to be red when they weren't automated. So they were all of the steps that were taking place manually. So
Wow.
now that these are blue, that means we've kind of automated them. So that's how we were kind of thinking about it was, okay, could we take this step and could we automate it using a tool,
I love
right?
that.
So this, for example, is a reminder that goes out to guests 2 days prior. And obviously Calendly has that feature,
Yeah.
right? And so we're like, okay, let's upgrade our Calendly subscription and make these additional features available to us. Um, Another reminder goes out when guests are done with the episode and they need to submit their bio and headshots, right?
Right.
So these were additional features that were available in Calendly that we weren't making use of. And one of our team members was doing this manually. And so, those were additional steps that we could remove that, power of computer could kind of alleviate for us. So this was the first step. And then once we started looking at all of the tools that we had, which was, Calendly to book appointments or book these shows, which would then appear in my calendar, and I would just click it on the day of the episode and jump on and talk, right? Um, we we thought, okay, we have all these steps. Let's all get together and start using Asana much
Uh-huh.
more effectively. So, Asana is a project management tool. You can see on the left here, we have various different projects, but the one I want to focus on is this one called podcast episodes. So, traditionally you have, things that you're working on, things that you need to do, things that are completed. Wonderful person on my team, Kelsey, she came up with kind of this model for our podcast. So, the easiest one to look at is on the very right, is maybe we won't show the no shows, but when the episode is live, it gets put into episode is live, right?
Nice.
And the step before that is that it's edited and uploaded. So right now we have nothing there. The step before that is the episode is recorded with the guest. And so all of these are sitting here, which need to be edited and uploaded. So we are actually done recordings up to, I think, end of Q1 of 2023. So
Oh
we have,
my goodness.
yeah,
Wow. That's the power of organization.
exactly. Yeah. And so you could see the ones below, they just have names. So my editor knows that when there's a number sign with the number of the episode,
Yeah.
that's the final title.
Yeah.
And so when she edits and uploads it, she will move this card into one of these.
Oh, super cool. So
one
very
of the
similar to Trello in terms of that like
exactly.
Kanban style cardboard. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly, yeah. And
Cool.
so when Kelsey, who was with us, she's no longer with us because she's taking a break, we would have guests that were scheduled that would be
Mm.
sitting here. And so once those were scheduled, then she would go in, do a bit of research about the guests, develop some questions. And when she was done that, it would sit in here. So when I come in, say like today, I'm talking to Jeremy, I would click on the card and the link to the Google Doc would be available.
Wow.
So that's how we are using Asana to pretty much coordinate between the three of us. So, and once I move this into the recorded section, Michelle, our editor, she will then know that she can go into Zoom because the recordings are there in Zoom, and she can download it and then edit and upload to Buzzsprout, and that gets disseminated. So everyone has access to all the tools they need, and this helps us keep organized.
Oh, I love it. It's like a central
Yeah,
dashboard that keeps your team on the same page, literally.
literally, exactly. And
Wow.
then the other magical piece that I then discovered was Zapier.
Aha.
So Zapier, if folks aren't familiar with it, it is this magical tool that just brings together different tools that you use and creates workflows, right?
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing, so when Kelsey ended up taking a break from PH Spot, that step of creating a Google Doc for that podcast guest and adding in some information about them and anything else was an additional step that I kind of had to take on. So what I ended up doing was creating a Zap where once an individual creates an event in Calendly, so pretty much says, okay, I'm going to do a recording with Sujani. This is a time that works well for me. And the moment they confirm that, and in Calendly, you can have multiple calendars. It needs to be a podcast recording. So there's the event type is a podcast recording. What happens is a new card gets created in Asana automatically,
Aha.
right? So those
Super cool.
cards that you see in Asana, I can go back here. These were automatically created by Zapier,
Wow.
right? So once the card is created, I've also added another step where it goes into my Google Docs and creates a new Word document.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah. And then, so we have a bit of background on the guests, and that comes in from, on Calendly. I asked them, what's your LinkedIn profile?
Right.
All of those get added right into that Google Doc automatically. And I have some basic prompts. I think I've gotten to become a lot more comfortable with podcast recordings and interviewing my guests that I really don't need to prep anymore. I just need to have these standard questions to refer to,
Yep.
and conversation just flows. So the research component and creating new questions has kind of wind down. And then, yeah, the guest's name gets populated here. And so this gets automatically created in Google Docs. And yeah, and then once the guest is done with their recording, so the day after or the day of the recording, they will also be added to my MailChimp list
Oh, so smart.
as a podcast guest. And I have to double check if that's still working because I knew I had some issues with that. But the idea there is if I were ever to send an email to my podcast guest just to say thank you, or would you like to come back again, everyone's in a mailing list, so I can refer to them there. So that's how this kind of works together. And if I click on, one example here, you'll see this individual's recording time was on 9 a.m. on Thursday, September 8th. And then I would just go into my Google Doc, search the name, because that's how it's saved, and grab that document for the recording on that date.
Oh, this is amazing, Sujani. Like basically, you are demonstrating the power of a 30-person podcast team with
Yeah.
3 people and a really smart selection of tools. I love this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been very fun. And I know I've only scratched the surface with Zapier. There's so much more I could do, so much more automation. It just takes time to kind of sit back and think about where can I optimize things in my business, and then leverage a tool like Zapier to help you automate things.
Yeah. So let me sort of imagine a
Mhm.
future entrepreneur out there, future podcast host, they
Yep.
want to replicate this on their side. Let's just start with the first thing you talked about, which is bringing on a team so it's not all on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Where would you even find people like that? People who have that expertise, who can help you out?
Yeah, so PH Spot, one of the best things I have is an amazing community. So
Aha.
we have about I'd say just under 5,000 people on our mailing
Wow.
list. And so for anything related to anything I'm building for PH Spot, I go back to our community.
Hmm.
So if I tell them, hey, which I did, I'm launching a podcast. What do you think the title should be? Give me some ideas. What are some topics you'd like to see? They're going to give that to me. And similarly, when I go to quote unquote hire people for PH Spot, I go to my community because who better to kind of work on these projects than somebody in the community, right? And
Absolutely.
so either they will apply themselves or they will know someone within their network and they end up sharing it with somebody, and that's how I ended up finding the wonderful people that are on our team. And um you eventually just train them up. I think some of these software are just so easy to use. Like Calendly is extremely easy to edit podcasts. We don't use any complicated software. We use Audacity to edit.
Mm.
And yeah, and it's very, very easy to figure out. I don't know what more to say other than all
Yeah.
of the tools that we have available to us as entrepreneurs in this time and age is just literally point and click.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so excited about this show, Sujani, because
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much at your fingertips. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the next step. You have this great team.
Yeah.
I noticed that you use Miro to diagram the flow. Do you
Mhm.
recommend that? Because you also talked about pen and paper. Someone
Yeah.
starting on this logistical process, what's the best way to get it organized?
I personally prefer pen and paper.
Okay.
So all these new tools I learned through my husband. He's a geek for all of these different tech things. So I'll see him use it, and then I'll kind of, assess what is the benefit of the tool for me. I can start on pen and paper, but because I have a team to share this with, it's easier for me to then transfer that to Miro, and then
Okay.
I could like color code and make changes as we are working on it as a team, right? So I
Right.
think when you have a team involved, it's also much easier to use software, web apps that can be shared across individuals. I think if you're starting off by yourself and pen and paper works well for you, I think do that, right? I remember the first version of it was on a whiteboard, and I had kind of like scribbled around where I wanted to make changes, and I had that right in front of me. But once I started involving my team, I transferred that onto Miro.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So it has that
Mhm.
like digital collaboration abilities, even if it
Exactly.
started originally on pen and paper.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then I know something that a lot of people are thinking right now is like, wow, that Zapier stuff felt like magic. Does
Hmm.
Sujani have a coding background? Is she doing anything technical? Tell folks about like what's happening
Yeah.
under the hood.
Yeah, I think no, I've had an interest in coding, but I never ever really learned it. It's really very easy. So I think the way Zapier has been built is that so you don't need a coding background,
Yeah.
right? So you go in, or even in, I think start with Miro or start with pen and paper and write down your whole process and think, okay, these are the different tools I'm using. Then ask Zapier, can I combine Calendly and Mailchimp? What options
Aha.
are there, right? Lots of free resources, lots of YouTube videos of other people doing the same thing. Zapier has lots of great resources as well. And I think if you think this can be automated, it probably can, right?
Wow.
So we have things like, I think if I go here, a notification to our team member, right? So we have a newsletter. So when individuals or organizations are submitting opportunities to our newsletter, it's through a Google form, but that Google form is associated to my account. So rather than me forwarding it on to Liz on my team, we've created a Zap so it automatically goes to Liz.
Oh,
Or
cool.
when a podcast goes live, there's an email template that gets sent to me that says like, hey, Jeremy, thanks so much for being on the podcast with me. Here's a link to your episode and a bit more detail around that. And that gets sent to me so that I can then, personalize it a little bit and hit forward to my guests. So, things like that where you're doing step, or you're taking steps in your business that are very repetitive, I think make note of that. And then one day just sit and play around with Zapier. And I think you get maybe a handful of free zaps for free, and then afterwards you can upgrade to the plan, so that you can add more zaps.
So cool. And so, any final words of wisdom for anyone listening out there who's thinking about starting a podcast, starting a business, doing something entrepreneurial like you're doing, Sujani? Anything that you want them to know?
I think just start.
Yeah.
I think the first question you had asked me was where I found my team, and how you go about that. And I think you don't even need that. The first few years of PH Spot was just me on my own. And I think the way you push through any kind of difficult times when you do start a business is choosing something that you absolutely love.
Yes.
I run PH Spot in addition to a 9 to 5 job. And I remember in the beginning, I would just absolutely love staying up to create the newsletter every week. So I was on vacation and I would be doing the newsletter in the airport. So it's something that you absolutely love. So it doesn't feel like, oh man, like, do I have to work on this today, right? You're essentially starting a business because you are in love with a certain area. So don't make it seem like it's work. Find the joy in it. If you do get burnt out, or if you're feeling a bit tired from it, just take a break and keep looking for the joy in the business that you started.
Oh, I love that. And I think you just shared a really dynamic recipe with everyone, which is before you skip to the stage of automation, Zapier, and all that, do something you love yourself, and
Hmm.
then you can figure out the right process. You can teach others, you can automate it because you've done it,
Exactly.
done it from the very beginning. And I think
Exactly.
you've demonstrated that beautifully today, Sujani.
Yeah. So when I hired my newsletter kind of like content manager, I had done the newsletter for about 2 years myself, every
Wow.
single week. So 52 weeks times two, it's over 100 newsletters I had done myself. So now I could hand that over to somebody else and say, okay, show me your magic. How can you take what I've already done and do? And I could also offer support because I've done it. Same thing with the podcast. I was editing those podcast episodes for a number of years before I hired someone else. So I think that's easier because you know exactly what the steps are. And so you could onboard somebody, provide the support, and then have them add their kind of element of uniqueness to that work.
Absolutely. And so I have a feeling that there are lots of people out there listening to this who are
Hmm.
inspired by your story. I know for a fact that applications to MPH programs have been way up ever since COVID, people
Oh yeah.
responding to this huge crisis in our society. If folks listening want to get really deep into an awesome public health career, what's the best next step?
Yeah, I think start with phspot.org. We have lots of great resources, free, tools that you can download and work through, whether it's you just thinking about what degree to even go into. Lots of people's stories that you can listen to on the podcast, read on the blog, sign up to our newsletter. We share free job opportunities, events, just anything under the sun related to public health comes out every week. And then once you're ready to kind of connect with community members from around the world who are public health professionals, we have something called the Public Health Career Club.
Mm,
So phspot.org/club. It's an online community of other public health professionals. We have weekly kind of talks and mastermind group, and training and coaching sessions, just all this amazing stuff from guest speakers who are also in public health. And it's an experience I want to call that we created because our people asked for it, and it took me about 5 years to build it because
wow.
we only launched it this October. But it was something that we kept being asked to create, and we finally did. And I'm just so excited about it and the potential it has.
That's awesome. Well, I think everyone listening out there is inspired not just by your path in your entrepreneurship and the way you've done all these amazing tools, but also by the path that you're opening for others. So thank you so much for joining us, Sujani. You have been an absolute inspiration.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. This is wonderful.
All right, you've been listening to Best Tool Ever with Sujani and Jeremy. Go check out these tools and go check out phspot.org. Have a great day, everyone.